Hi good people, Titus here for part 2 of our Chaff grenade tutorial series, and in this video we'll focus on creating the blueprint for the actual grenade toss so we can actually spawn our effect. But let's not waste any time, jump right into it. Alright, so last we left off we were creating the actual visual effect for the Chaff grenade, and that's kind of where we got this little green effect here going. But now we actually need to work on the grenade toss. So we're going to go into our blueprints folder and we're going to simply right click, do a new blueprint class. We'll do of type actor, call it BP underscore chaff grenade. And we'll double click to open it up. And I'm actually going to dock it in the parent window. So first thing we'll want to do is actually set up a static mesh. So we can just simply hit add, and you can choose cube, and we'll maybe just title it the bomb. And then on the right panel, I'm going to change the cube to be a cylinder. And then maybe we'll scale it down 0.1, and I'll undo the lock, and on the z-axis maybe I'll do a 0.3 or maybe a 0.2, something like that. And we can compile and actually drag out our blueprint in scene, hit play, and see how it looks. It's a little bit wide, maybe a little bit skinnier. Let's see if we can do that real quick. 0.09, 0.08. And then for the material, we'll just give it some standout color, kind of like that. Compile and save. And then there's our grenade right there. Delete it from the scene. Now the other thing we'll want to make sure we do with the blueprint is we're going to want to make sure simulate physics is turned on. Now if you guys are following along from the Blender mini-series and you want to use the actual model that you created, or if you have something from the marketplace you want to use, I can show you that real quick. Just right click, blueprint class. It. I'm not going to use this, but just to show you how it can be done. And then what you can do is press Control Spacebar, bring up your actual import from Marmoset. You should have your textures imported and your model. So you can select all the model objects with Shift Select like that. Hit Add and do Static Mesh. And then what you'll want to do is you'll want to pick one of these objects. It doesn't matter which one. Like I'm just going to use 10. And you'll want to nest all the other static meshes underneath that one. Kind of like this. Alright. Now with everything parented, you'll do the parent object, whatever one you select, and you'll simulate physics on that one. And then you'll compile. And then the other thing you can do is, if you remember from the mini-series, we didn't scale it in Blender, so if you need to scale it in game, you can come over here and under the parent object, you just give your scale, and all the objects will actually follow it. So if you were to drag that out, there's your model there, and because I simulate physics, it falls down. So it should be the same thing with this one as well. Pretty straightforward. And then for the material, what you can do is under your material slot, you can just right click and do a new material. Call it whatever. I'm not going to use it, so I'm just going to call it delete me. Open the material slot up. Again, Control Space. you shift select your exported materials, drag them into the scene, and then we'll pull our mix map, normal, and color, hook up the color to the base color, or your albedo, your albedo export, and then the normal RGB into the normal, and then the mix map, the red channel was the ambient occlusion, the green was roughness, and the blue was our metallic. And then you can see the object there. Save your actual material. And then under your model, you just have to control space again. Just highlight the material you actually made, which put there. This was in, oh, I put it in the wrong one, that's why. Okay. Control space, put in demo materials, this one right there. So highlight the material you create, and then you can just simply hit the little arrow under the material section, and then you'll just repeat that for all your objects. This would be the same process that you would do for something if you got it from the marketplace, or if you created your own asset. For the sake of this tutorial, I'm going to assume you guys didn't follow along with any of those other tutorials, or you don't have any other meshes, so I'm just going to use just a simple shape just to demonstrate the actual effect anyways. So, either way. Alright, going back, we have our static mesh created. We have it simulating physics. So now we need to basically create some code. So we can come to the event graph, and we can get rid of the begin overlap and the event tick. I don't think we'll need it for anything. What we're going to want to do is when this thing is instantiated, or when it's created, the begin play function will call automatically. So we can drag off that and do a cast. And we're going to cast to our first person character. So BP underscore first person character. If you're doing the third person template, it would be BP underscore third person character, or whatever your player pawn is. And then we need to have an object in here. So you can just simply do a get player pawn and leave index at 0, which is just player 1. Drag it like that. And to get the actual grenade toss, we want to get the forward direction from the first person player. But specifically, if we come over to the first person blueprint and look at the viewport, we want to get a reference to one of these components. The one that makes the most sense is the first person camera. That's going to be where your player is looking. So what we can do is, as the after the cast, under your blue your little blue pin here, you can drag off and do a get first person camera. And then from the camera, you can get the forward vector, which is just the direction the camera's looking. And then from there we can do some math. We're going to want to create some variables real quick. The first variable we want to create is probably going to be our throwing distance, and that's going to be of type float. And the next one we're going to want to create is our rotation value, which is going to be our spin. After we compile, the throwing distance, I'm going to do 1400 starting off, because I find that's pretty good. And then the rotation value, I think 300 or 350 is probably pretty good. And then we can play with those values and adjust them depending on how the effect actually goes in game, so we might change it around. So after we get the forward vector, we can drag off and do a multiply. We take the forward direction, we multiply it by the throwing distance. And then from there, we can add an impulse. And you're going to choose the impulse to be the bomb. If you're using the Blender mini-series model that you created, this reference would be the reference that you parented all the sub-objects to. So in my example, I think I used static mesh number 10. But, you know, whichever one you're using. And then we can plug in this map result into the impulse field and then check the velocity change. So this is what's going to give it an actual throw, and it's going to propel it forward. Now we don't want it propelled forward in the same orientation every time. We kind of want it to, you know, be a little bit random and tumble through the air. So to tumble, what you can do is drag off the pin to add angular impulse in degrees. And again, we'll want a reference to our bomb. Or if you're doing the Blender mini-series, it would be the whatever object you have parented to. To do the math on this one, we don't have a reference we can pull off of, but that's okay. We can just right-click and do a random unit vector. Just picks a random value, and then we can multiply that by our rotation value. So nothing too complicated for the math here. And we'll plug that into the impulse and check the velocity change. And then we can set our delay. And this will be our, I guess, our fuse. I'm going to do 1.5 starting off. And we can compile. And that's a pretty good start for our code. So with this, we should be able to create some code in the first person character and actually see if this moves the way we expect it to. Alright, so let's come over to the first person character, and the event graph. Go to the bottom here in open space. I'm just simply going to do a keyboard event. I'm going to find a key, so I'm going to use G. When G is pressed, I'm going to spawn actor from class. And then I'm going to right click and split this structure pin because I really only need the location. The class I want to spawn is the Chaff grenade that we created earlier. The problem is I have no way to actually spawn in a transform location. So I need to create a reference to be able to do that. I made one for the demo called throw location, but I'll make another one just so you can see the process. I just select the main character and you hit add a component. You can do like an arrow, you can do a scene component, you can kind of do anything, it doesn't really matter. This time I'll do an arrow. And then I'll title it throw arrow. And then I can place the arrow where I want the grenade to come out from. You don't have to be too crazy. And you'll notice in the details panel it's hidden in game as checked, so we shouldn't be able to see it in game. But in the code, I can just drag out my throw arrow, which gets a reference to it. Pull off that pin and do get world location. And then I can just simply plug in that transform into our spawn actor here. And we can compile, and then we can see what this actually looks like. There we go. Alright, so wait for the effect to go away. Okay. And we'll press G. And after 1.5 seconds, we actually didn't do any code, but that would be where the actual thing would happen. So we should be able to run around the map and actually throw these little objects. Pretty straightforward. Alright, let's go ahead and get rid of these two objects. I'm going to get rid of some of these other ones here. Alright, so we're looking pretty good so far with our flashbang, our chaff grenade code. So after the delay, we could then actually spawn in some effects. So let's do let's play sound. The sound I'm going to do is the built-in explosion number 2. And I'm just going to set the volume to be a real small 0.1, so it's just kind of a pop. I can then do spawn emitter at location. And then I can drag in the bomb reference, get world location, and I'm just going to spawn the emitter wherever the bomb is, like that. And I'm going to use the explosion emitter that comes with the starter contact. After that, I can then spawn a system. We'll do spawn system at location. And then again, I'm just going to drag off here. And then I'll double click and add another little node. And the system I'm going to do is going to be the one I created earlier, which is the chaff underscore, or whatever you guys named it. And then after that, we can basically destroy the actor. So let's see how this actually looks. So we'll go back to the game, hit play, and we'll press G, throws the grenade, you see the explosion, and you have the green effect there. Now, if you think the particles, like if you don't have enough particles compared to like the original one we made, you can change that in the actual Niagara system. So you can go back to your chaff and under, I think it's spawn burst instantaneous. Whenever you're doing values, I recommend doubling or halving them. It's just easier, and then you can kind of go from there. So now if we push play, press G for the grenade, throws out, and then you get a little bit more particle systems here, which is maybe the effect you're going for. A little bit, you know, just don't go too overboard with it, I guess. The other part we need to do, though, is we need to create a collider. So let's go back into our blueprints folder here. Alright, so we spawning the grenade. In order to trigger the post-process effect, we need some sort of collision zone. You could do it on the actual grenade itself, but the problem is you need to destroy parts of the grenade, so that can get a little, you might get some errors because the parts of the grenade are missing. It gets a little bit complicated, so sometimes it's easier just to do it as a separate blueprint. So we can actually come here, right-click to another blueprint class of type actor. We'll call it BP underscore collider chaff. And this one's going to be real simple. You just add one component. It's going to be a box collider or box collision. And I'm going to check the box that make sure it's not hidden in game, because I need to see kind of what this thing looks like. And then what we can do is we can come back to our chaff grenade, and I would say after the delay fuse, we can do a spawn actor from class like we did before. Running out of room here. We'll split the transform pin again. And then we can spawn it at the bomb's location. And this time it's going to be the BP underscore collider underscore Chaff. File and save. And now, throw the grenade out, it spawns that little box, which is much too small. Yeah, so I think we need to make it bigger. So let's scale this by maybe 8. File save. Throw the grenade out. Now you have this little trigger zone. Now what we can do with this trigger zone is, even though the grenade's exploded and gone, and that piece is gone, we can tell the, we can keep the trigger zone there for a set amount of time. And then when the actor or the player goes inside the trigger zone, we can then trigger the post-process effect. So that's the idea anyways. But let's actually set some code up. So the code for this is going to be pretty simple. We'll just go to the event graph. We're going to have overlap and begin play, but we don't need tick. At least I don't plan on using tick. Alright, so let me delete it for some reason. Why won't it let me delete it? Alright, well, anyways. On the begin play, we can just drag off and set a delay. And we could probably parameterize this, maybe create a variable, but for now, I'm just going to set it at 10 seconds. And then after 10 seconds, I'm going to destroy the entirety of the actor. So just get rid of the whole collision. On the begin overlap, I'm going to do a cast to BP first person character. And then I'll plug in the other actor into the object field. If the cast is successful, I'm going to print string and do Chaff. If it's not successful, print string, and I'll just drag out the, oops, actually no, I'll just put missed. File save. So now I throw the grenade down, it explodes. Nothing. It exploded. It had contacted some things, but it didn't hit. But if I walk in, you can see I got chaffed. And that'll actually be the basics of the code. So it interacted with the objects, but it's not going to play the post process because it's a miss. It'll only play when the player actually interacts with it, and then it calls the whatever code we set up for the chaff. But yeah, I think that's going to be it for here. So alright everyone, that pretty much concludes this section. In the next video we'll actually create the post-process effect on the screen. So that'll be where it actually distorts, the player's screen based on the actual chaff around the player. It'll be a lot more complicated than the flashbang post-process, but it's also a good way to demonstrate on how powerful this UE system actually is. But as always, thanks for watching, consider subscribing, and see you on the next one.